mercy from the Lord. And the second part is the story of Gopakumar, a cowherd boy from Govardhan, how he goes back to Godhead and how he, the idea is to understand which is the highest place and who are the highest people. So we're in the second part, story of Gopakumar, and there are 7 chapters in the second part. We are in the 6th chapter, so we're getting towards the end of the story of Gopakumar, which is the end of Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And what has happened, it's a long story, but he has just arrived in Goloka Vrindavan, the topmost part of the spiritual world. And first of all, he arrives and he doesn't know where he is. And he's wondering, could it be Goloka Vrindavan? Is it possible? So he asks some people, and they don't say anything. They're just sort of in trances of their own. So he wanders around and eventually finds a village with a palace, and there's one elderly man there just chanting Krishna, Krishna, Krishna and crying. And Gopakumar asks him, whose palace is that? And the elderly man says, it is the palace of the father of Sri Nanda Nandan, who is Krishna, the dear son of Nanda Maharaj. So Gopakumar understands, I am in Goloka. I have actually made it. So it's latish afternoon. That sounds like 4 o'clock to 5, something like that. And then Gopakumar hears some of the people saying, Krishna will be returning soon. And they're talking about how Krishna had gone out earlier into the forests and the pastures with the cows and the cowherd boys, and they start gathering. I mean, the village people, particularly ladies, but all the people in the village start discussing, he's going to be coming soon. Yes, he's going to be coming soon. Which way will he come? And they say, well, he usually comes from this side. And Gopakumar understands they're talking about Krishna. Then he sees dust kicked up by the hooves of the cows. And everyone sees, and everyone says, it's him, he's coming, he's coming. And then Gopakumar, so we're in verse 55 of chapter 6 of part 2. So Gopakumar is speaking. He's actually telling his experience to a Brahmin from Mathura in Vrindavan on this planet, because he went to Goloka, met Krishna, and then he was given the service of coming back here and preaching to get other people to go back. So that's where he is now, and he's reciting his own experience to that Brahmin. Then, from a distance, I saw him, his charming flute in hand. Running quickly, he emerged from among his friends and animals and approached me, saying in a sweet voice, "Look, Sridham, here is my dear friend Sarup, the sun who shines on the lotus of your family." So this is Krishna speaking to Sridham as the brother of Radharani. And he tells Sridham, first thing, here's my dear friend Sarup. Means, in Goloka Vrindavan, Gopakumar's name, he's not called Gopakumar. His name is Sarup. Yeah. And he is a member of the family of Sridham. Means he's a Gopakumar, Sarup, is a relative of Srimati Radharani. But he had somehow fallen to the material world, and now he's come back. Okay. Krishna was dressed for the forest. His garments, earrings, and peacock feather crown all swayed to and fro, and so did his garland of kadamba flowers. His fragrance perfumed all directions, and his beautiful lotus face blossomed with a playful smile. We mentioned the other day, there was mention of his Krishna's fragrance. And we made the point that Krishna sometimes, he likes to do things secretly, so people don't know that he's there, like particularly, for example, meeting Radharani secretly. So sometimes he meets her secretly, but then someone like Jatila, have you heard of Jatila? You have. Have you heard? You have. Jatila comes and Krishna has to quickly disappear. Shoo. But when Jatila comes, she knows Krishna has been there because his fragrance is still there. It's a unique, incredible fragrance. So here, Krishna's coming from the forest, and his fragrance is perfuming all the directions. 57. His lotus eyes beamed with a merciful glance, and the varied assets of beauty decorated him in a singular way. The fingers of his lotus hand busily pushed back the locks of his hair, which flew about, adorned with the dust raised by the cows. So his hair is, blowing around, and it's got speckles, sort of like speckles of dust in it from being out all day with the cows. His tender, divine lotus feet touched the surface of the earth just to grant her the gift of supreme splendor. Playfully dancing as they moved, they attracted everyone's heart with their great eagerness to walk quickly with large steps. That's his feet, Krishna's lotus feet. They were dancing playfully, his feet, as he moved. The effulgence of his cloud-colored body, shining with the full sweetness of youth, lit up all corners of the sky. His beauty, which captured the hearts of the ever-dear devotees of Vraja, was an ocean abounding with countless excellences. 60. He leaped forward and came close to me, compelled by the affection of his helpless devotee. I fainted in love at seeing him. he caught hold of me by the neck, and suddenly he too fell to the ground. So, he's met Krishna before. Like in Dwarka, he was in Ayodhya, he was in Vaikuntha. So he's met Krishna in these different places. But Krishna in those places does not have the beauty that he has in Vraja. So it's very overwhelming. And Krishna just comes running forward to meet him. And then Gopakumar, or Sarup, he faints. And Krishna grabs hold of him, but then Krishna faints. Did you ever faint when you saw someone? Me too, me neither. They have to be pretty amazing for us to faint when we see them. A moment later, I re-awoke and carefully freed my neck from his grasp. I stood up and saw him on the ground, unconscious, covered with dust. He was moistening the path with his tears. So they both fainted. But Gopakumar, Sarup, comes back to consciousness first, but Krishna is still lying on the ground, unconscious, but still crying. He's unconscious, but he's crying so profusely that his tears were turning the dust on the road into mud. Some gopis came and said, "Look, who has come here? What has he done? He has put our life and soul into such a state. Alas, alas, just see, people of Vraja, now we are all dead." Because they think Krishna is dead. They think he's died. Somehow, between when Gopakumar and Krishna were together, Krishna died. So maybe Gopakumar killed Krishna. So the gopis said, "This must be some servant of that great wizard Kamsa." They're now saying, because they don't know who Gopakumar is. They haven't seen him. He's been away for a long time. And so here's this strange person. And it seems through contact with him, Krishna seems to have died. So they're wondering, what happened? Who did this? Who is this? That's Sarup. And someone says, this must be some servant of that great wizard, Kamsa. Lamenting like this in many ways, the gopis cried loudly in distress as they surrounded Krishna. Then, from behind Krishna, several groups of cowherds quickly approached. Seeing him in such a state, they cried with pitiful voices. From far away in the village, Nanda and the other elder cowherds heard this terrible sound of crying. So too did Yashoda, ever affectionate to her son, and so did the other elder ladies and the maidservants. Together they all ran to that place, their feet stumbling on the path. Bewildered, they too cried, "Alas, alas!" Then the cows and bulls and calves came there, and the black deer and other animals. Seeing Krishna in that state, they wept in agony. The animals, all crying out of love, their faces drenched with floods of tears, approached Krishna one by one and gently smelled and licked him again and again. 69. Great numbers of birds flying overhead told also of their misery by making a tumultuous noise that sounded like people crying, because they're all devotees. These are animals, just birds, but they're devotees. But they're so attached to Krishna that they're just crying and screaming. And the immobile creatures in great pain within seemed suddenly to dry up. What more is there to say? All beings, moving and non-moving, were on the verge of death. As for me, I was drowning in a vast ocean of sorrow, confused about what to do, severely tormented. I put Krishna's feet on my head and began profusely sobbing and lamenting. Then Lord Balabhadra, Lord Balaram, Krishna's older brother, quickly arrived from some distance away, full of fear, white-complexioned and arrayed in blue garments. He appeared charming, for he was the same age as Krishna and as nicely dressed. So Balaram appears on the scene. And Balaram, he's the older brother, but Balaram, he is a particularly intelligent person. In fact, he's called the crest jewel of the intelligent. So here we have this devastating scene. It looks like Krishna has been killed by Gopakumar. And all the people and animals and birds are just gathered around. And they're just, totally beyond, in just total devastation. So what to do? So Lord Balabhadra, that most skillful of persons, cried for a moment, but then seemed to regain his composure and looked all around. With great care and attention, he made me sit down and hold his younger brother by the neck with my arms. So he makes Sarup, Gopakumar, sit down by Krishna and hold Krishna, hold him like this, head here, like that, because Balaram is going to save the day. He wiped Krishna's beautiful limbs clean with my hand. In other words, Balaram took the hand of Sarup and got him to stroke Krishna's head or limbs, and made me loudly call out to him with many plaintive cries. Then he made me lift Krishna up from the ground. Suddenly, Krishna opened his eyes, sealed till then by a flood of tears. Seeing me, he joyfully embraced and kissed me. But then he looked around and became embarrassed, because everyone is just surrounding him, just totally focused. Well, so Krishna had become bewildered by love for Gopakumar, Sarup. and was crying because of love. Flood of tears. And he was embarrassed that all the people are seeing me crying. That best of lords took my hand in his own left lotus hand, and received me as a long-lost bosom friend. He asked me various questions. Then he greeted all the people of Vraja and entered the best of cowherd villages with the gait of an elephant. So they met, they embraced, they both fainted. Gopakumar came back to consciousness, but Krishna didn't, at least yet. And all the people started gathering, and they don't know who is Gopakumar. And even though it's Goloka Vrindavan, they think it's just home. They don't really think that this is the topmost abode, everybody is eternal, we are eternal. They just take it, this is home. And who is this? So someone asks, who has done this to our Krishna? And someone points at Gopakumar. It was him. And so they start gathering around Gopakumar, like, we are going to get you. So Gopakumar just arrived in Goloka. He's in ecstasy. And he just saw Krishna. He's in total ecstasy. But now this happens, and everyone's going to get him. So, from extreme ecstasy to extreme shock. Amazing. So anyway, now Krishna's all right, and everybody goes back into the village. The forest animals were miserable because now they had to part from him. Unable to go anywhere without him, they simply stood at the entrance of the village, ready to spend the entire night there, in the hope of seeing their Lord again the next morning. The birds flew here and there, high over the village to watch him. But when night came and they could no longer see him, they cried out as if weeping and flew away. So all the beasts, all the creatures in Goloka, including the jungle beasts and the birds, are fixed in unalloyed devotion and love for Krishna. At the insistence of Nanda Maharaj, who was anxious with love for his sons, just after milking the cows, the two brothers went to their home. They went home at once, not even giving the cows proper attention. Mother Yashoda quickly came to meet the boys, her clothing and body wet with the milk flowing from her breasts, and the tears that flooded from her eyes in love. Together with Rohini, she offered lamps to both brothers, worshipping each limb of their bodies again and again, because that's what they would do, and it's a Vedic point of culture. When someone really special comes, you offer arti to them. And so when Krishna would come back every day, they would offer arti to him and to Balaram. Yashoda performed arti to her son Krishna by caressing him with her own hair and affectionately embraced and kissed him. She couldn't decide whether she ought to keep him on her head, at her breast, or within her womb to protect him. Krishna, anxious with love for me, brought me there outside his home and had me offer respects to her. And Mother Yashoda, seeing the great love Krishna had for me, happily caressed me as though I were her own son. Then the gopis all arrived there at once. Some had made excuses for coming, and others had paid no regard to what anyone thought. In other words, people, family members, tried to stop them. But some made excuses that, no, don't worry, we'll be back. We forgot something, we got to go get it there, or something like that. And others just said, listen, see you later. Bad Malenge. Do you understand Hindi? Bad Malenge. See you later. Mother Yashoda and Mother Rohini got ready to bathe Krishna and his brother. But when Lord Krishna saw this, being eager to enjoy with the cowherd girls, he said, "Dear mothers, we brothers are very hungry, so please make some rice, send for our father, and feed us right away." Upon hearing these words, the gopis said affectionately, "Sri Yashoda, Queen of Vraja, and dear Rohini Devi, please set this work of bathing aside." Because the gopis, the young gopis, want to bathe Krishna and Balaram. Please quickly prepare everything to feed these two boys. We shall gladly give them a proper bath without delay. Sri Yashoda said, "Dear girls, first quickly bathe the older boy, then send him to fetch Nanda for the meal." So quickly, bathe Balaram. And then while you're bathing Krishna, Balaram will go fetch Nanda Maharaj. Sri Sarup said, so this is Gopakumar, Sarup. Sri Sarup said, welcoming and praising Yashoda's words, several of the gopis quickly bathed Balaram and sent him off. Meanwhile, the two mothers went into the house. Yeah. So, okay, anyway. The gopis divided up the service among themselves. They removed Krishna's various ornaments one by one and wiped his limbs with their own garments. But when they asked for his flute, who was like their rival consort, and tried to snatch it from his lotus hand, Krishna made a sign to alert me and threw it from a distance into my open hand. Because the gopis will steal the flute. Oh yes. Because the gopis are envious of the flute. Oh yes. This flute gets to taste the nectar of Krishna's lips. It's not right. It's for us. Yes. So several of the girls were greedily demanding, "Give it to me. No, give it to me." And were threatening to rip it away by force. Therefore Krishna sort of, wrinkled his eyebrows, did something like that, as a sign to Sarup and threw it to him. The gopis smeared fine oils on Krishna and slowly removed the excess with their soft lotus hands, expert in touch. Yet Krishna, either because his body was so tender, or else simply out of playful naughtiness, suddenly drew in his breath, making a sound of pain, and distorted his beautiful face. Oh, something like that. His mother, her life dedicated only to his welfare, heard that sound and quickly came outside and asked, "What has happened? What has happened?" But when she saw her son's smiling face, she went back into the house. And the gopis, laughing yet afraid, started to sing as they finished Krishna's massage. Next, they playfully bathed him with warm, clear, fragrant water carried from the Yamuna in jewel-studded vessels and small clay pots. Yeah. Because the water from the Yamuna is slightly warm, not hot, at least in those days. They dressed him like an actor and decorated him the way he liked, with clothes, jewelry, wonderful garlands, and perfumed pastes, all brought from their homes. They stealthily fed him something, worshipped him again and again with prescribed items, and then placed those items on their heads. They decorated his throat, his forehead, his cheeks, and so on with wonderful designs made with first-class pastes of sandal, saffron. While he lovingly gazed at the gopis, they tried hard to keep their hands steady, as with pleasure they set about daubing collyrium on his lotus eyes to make them shine. Wow. Kajal. Collyrium, kajal, yeah. Yeah, kajal. Krishna spoke freely with them about how he enjoyed sporting in the forest. And by joking with them in various charming ways, he inspired their special conjugal love. In the midst of all these loving exchanges, the decoration never quite got finished. The gopis had to keep erasing their attempts and trying again and again. Because they would decorate Krishna, and then they think, no, it'd be better this way. So they'd, do it in a different way. Then, no, in a different way. Or else, it's described in Nectar of Devotion, Srimati Radharani is speaking to one gopi who has just been with Krishna and whose face was decorated by Krishna himself. And Radharani's looking at this gopi and she sees the decoration that Krishna did is perfect. All these designs, very subtle, fine designs, everything is perfect. And so she says to the gopi, "You're not very beautiful." Because Krishna was so close to you doing the decoration, but he didn't become affected by your beauty. So he was able to do everything perfectly. If you were beautiful, he would have, become a little spaced out and splodged things like that. Like I remember one of my first, my first year in London, I became the treasurer. And you have to do, like, if you're familiar with a petty cash book, a petty cash book and a cash book. So the devotee before me who did it, he didn't sleep much at all. So whenever he would be writing up the book, all the expenditures and whatnot, he would fall asleep. And when he fell asleep, his hand with the pen would go like that. So, he's writing. So all the pages of the book, they all had lines. Krishna, like 4 or 5 lines each page. So something similar with the gopis, decorating Krishna. Mother Yashoda, her heart, perturbed by affection for her son, came outside several times to see what was going on and spoke to the girls as if angry. Because, mothers, they speak as if angry, right? But they're not angry. It's just the rasa. It's the relationship. Sri Yashoda said, "O daughters of the cowherds, you are just unreliable children. Haven't you finished bathing and decorating him yet?" Sri Sarup said, as the gopis stood around their beloved Krishna, glancing at him again and again, one elderly lady noticed that Krishna seemed eager for some joking words. She therefore spoke up. "My goodness, come here, my daughter Yashoda. You'll be happy to see this. These girls have made your dark blue son very handsome." Hearing these joking words from the elderly lady, her nurse Mukara, Yashoda again came outside, and when she understood the joke, she spoke out as if angry. Sri Yashoda declared, "All kinds of natural beauty worship the lotus feet of my son, Shamsundar, who dances with abandon on the head of the universe." All kinds of beauty, natural beauty, worship Krishna's lotus feet. For sure, the beauty of all these girls, of these gopis combined, deserves not even a show of respect from the beauty of even the tip of one of his toenails. How's that? The beauty of all the gopis combined isn't as beautiful as the tip of one of his toenails. Sri Sarup said, "Is it possible to describe his beauty, the splendor of his effulgent complexion, or his charming sweetness? To that sweetness, no things in this world can compare, nor can even the sweetness of God himself in other forms, not even as the Lord of Dwarka." Even Krishna in Dwarkadish. You just cannot compare to the beauty of Krishna. As Krishna is the most superb of all romantic heroes, so Radha is the most superb of heroines. And as Radha is the most superb of all romantic heroines, so Krishna is the most superb of heroes. So, devotees, I think we'll continue. Yes, tomorrow night. Is that okay? It's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. So we'll continue every night. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.